Hello and welcome to what we're hoping is the first of many 905 podcasts, a new podcast for the 905 region in Ontario, in the Greater Toronto area, specifically aimed at the areas outside central Toronto. My name is Roland and I'm here with my co-host Joel MacLeod. And we're going to give you today a quick introduction to what we're hoping to do with this podcast, why we're starting it, and what we hope it will become in the weeks and months to come. So first of all, we'll start off with some introductions. My name's Roland Tanner, as I said, based in Burlington. And over the last decade or so, myself and also Joel have been involved in our local community, sometimes in politics and party politics, sometimes in volunteering. We've both run for office at various points. We're both probably not going to do so again. I don't know. We've seen a need, I guess, for a new media entity of some kind in the 905 region. So, Joel, do you want to give a quick introduction yourself and your background?
Sure, I will do my best. As you said, Roland, I've worked in politics and in opening small businesses of my own in the area. You and I have been involved in numerous campaigns at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels here in the 905 area, and I think you and I both share a passion for the region and for the area. And we've noticed over the last, I'm going to say, 10 years, just a kind of a steady decline of media entities and media awareness of some of the issues that have been going on in the region, and at the same time, in that void, some real issues have arisen that are not being addressed, and there's debates that we think that should be happening that are not happening in any public forum, and I think that's something that you and I were hoping to address with starting with this podcast, and hopefully with our listeners' involvement and their passion as well. Hopefully, we can grow this into something a little bit more robust and meaningful to people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really we live in a region of 4 million people or so. When you take Toronto proper out of the equation. That is growing at a very fast rate. This is the fastest growing region in Canada in terms of population. It's the economic powerhouse of the country. It's a part of the country that very much decides elections more and more often, both at a provincial and federal level. And yet, what we have Absolutely. Is the general retreat of traditional media, of the old kind of local newspapers and regional newspapers, has left our whole region almost completely without serious coverage. Without wanting to throw the local newspapers under the bus too much, they're struggling, and I think that's the nicest way you can put it, to provide more than really superficial coverage of what's happening in our city halls, the important issues that are happening in our communities.
Well, I think I can remember back in the day, there used to be quite a robust media environment here in the 905, especially here in Burlington, because I can remember as a young grade school elementary student, my after-school job was delivering the Burlington Spectator, and over the years that went defunct. The Hamilton Spectator lost more and more of its coverage of Burlington, and it rightfully so started focusing more on Hamilton-specific issues. But we saw a centralization. The Burlington Post, the Oakville Beaver, and the Milton Champion are all owned by Torstar, and they all run pretty much the same articles, written by the same journalists. And I mean, it all comes down to money. There's just nobody's investing the resources and the interest into some of the stories that need to be told in this region. And you and I have both commented numerous times, just where's the debate on things like development? Where's the debate on economic development, business interests? The politicians in our region often get away without proper scrutiny because there's nobody to hold them to account. They stand to the microphone, they decree their decisions, but some of us to say, well, we have questions, those questions aren't being asked. And I think you and I both agree it's time for that to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's dangerous when there's no proper media oversight of the decisions that are being made by politicians, and it's also dangerous because into the kind of vacuum comes bad information, and that can lead to. I mean, again, this is a process we're certainly seeing worldwide right now, not just in our little corner of it, but of polarization.
Sadly, yes.
And you know, if we can contribute in a small way to countering that, trying to get some informed and reasonably intelligent discussion of what's happening out there, then hopefully that'll be both interesting and entertaining, a little bit educational, and contribute something to our communities.
I was just going to say that I think when we were discussing this, we were talking about how we wanted to kind of reach out beyond the same voices that were constantly being heard. Because you and I both, we've talked that the 905 is becoming a very diverse region. There's a lot of divisions economically, culturally happening in the region, and with that I don't think it's a matter of friction, but it's a source to draw upon, that there are new perspectives that we think need to have a turn at the microphone and need to have a say in contributing to the debates on how this region of not just the province, but the country is going to develop over the next generation or so. Yeah.
I mean, that's such an important point to make, that this is one of the most diverse regions in Canada, probably the most diverse in Canada from all perspectives. From the ethnic and religious perspective, from different income groups, from the very comfortable and wealthy to people who've just arrived in the country, who may be coming from, say during the recent Syrian refugee crisis, or come to our country with literally almost nothing. This is really the future of Canada is really here, in our region. And it's important that we get beyond. We say this as two white guys sitting in our basements. It's really important that we get beyond just the usual suspects kind of commenting on things. But although we can't change who we are, we can hopefully change. Bring many other voices into the conversation in the weeks and months to come. Yeah, so that's kind of the objective. And as I say, Joel and myself are both based in Burlington, which is so it may well be that there's an early emphasis on things happening in the Burlington and Halton region, but in time we hope this will become a podcast that will kind of grow as more and more people contribute, as more and more people listen, to become more properly representative of the region as a whole, and the shared issues that are going on. And you mentioned the development issue, for instance. There was someone forwarded me an article today it's from the Hamilton Spectator about suggesting there should be a LRT in Burlington as a way of kind of refocusing development away from the downtown area, which has been caused a great deal of controversy in recent years. this is really, speaking just from Burlington's point of view, but I know from other cities as well, this is an overwhelmingly hot button issue in our region. We saw it at the last election in 2018. We were both involved that municipal elections are usually not considered particularly interesting. It used to be in the past, certainly in Burlington, that many councillors were elected by acclamation. Once you got elected, it was difficult to get unelected without really trying hard.
Yeah, but I think that's changed in the last few years. I think it's. I mean, we have in the last here in Burlington, and I'm going to include Hamilton as well. I think in the last few elections we've seen turnovers. There's been the people are willing to give you a shot if you want to come in and say no, things need to change, and people are willing to give you a shot. But if people don't like you, they're becoming a lot more active, and I think that trend's ending. I think, and it's a good thing. I think now, if you're a city councillor or a mayor, at least in Burlington or in Hamilton, if you are not cutting it according to what the people want or the people think that they want, you're turfed after your term is up. Which is a good thing to have. I like seeing that bit of accountability brought back, and keep our councillors and our mayors on their toes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the situation as it used to be was not good, and it's got to be healthier. That people are now paying attention closely enough that we are seeing almost whole councils turfed on occasions. I mean, again, using Burlington as an example, yet again, partly that was down to retirements and people decided not to run again at the last election. But I think some of those retirements happened because people saw the way the wind was blowing and that it was not going to be an election according to the old rules.
I mean, that's just. I'll be honest, that's a sign of cowardice. I mean, if you're not willing to put your record on the line when you run, and I don't think you want to be there for the right reasons in the first place. It does. I mean, that's just the facts of politics. You run on your record, and you should want to get reelected unless you're looking at retirement or I think you've accomplished what you wanted to do. But I think we're seeing is that people are getting elected on change tickets, but the problem is change is a lot more. It's a lot harder to define, and it's easier to be upset with somebody and say, "Well, we want to give somebody else a shot." Okay, great, but getting elected on a ticket of, "Well, we want to change the status quo" isn't good enough. I think we're coming more and more of you need a vision. You need to present. This is what I want to see our community look like. Do you agree with it? Because, and I think especially now with COVID-19, there's a lot of questions happening about urban development, about how do we get away from the car-centric urban planner model, which, let's face it, I mean, the 905 was built on that concept, that idea of a suburban sprawling landscape of strip malls and parking lots, and bungalow single family housing, and that has to go the way of the dinosaur. I think we're seeing if we want to protect the green belt and the questions about the environment and being sustainable, we need to rethink the idea of what the 905 was built on, of this kind of sprawl. We can just keep building out. We'll just keep building. There's always another field we can pave over to make a strip mall or a new housing development or whatever have you. And we need to start thinking more in terms of, I'm not going to make the argument of, we just need to start building up. I think we need to start building more innovatively and start thinking outside the box in terms of how do we use the space that we have. And that's the challenge that I think our elected officials are going to have to step forward and debate and wrestle with in the years and terms ahead.
And I think, I mean, that again, a really important point. In the vacuum of the media, the debate gets reduced to such a basic level of for or against something, when we need to be having discussions that are much more intelligent and much more based on kind of a shared understanding of facts. What powers do a council and a mayor actually have? I think most people would probably say they assume they're electing, the prime minister for the city, if you like, and the mayor
Right.
and that council have the ability to set an agenda. Actually, that's not how our system works. Maybe it should work that way, but it doesn't. So people running for office saying, I'm going to change everything and I'm going to fix everything overnight are kind of sometimes not entirely being generous with truth. I mean, it would, to my mind, it'd be a lot more honest to say, elect me, and I'm going to do I'm going to do what's possible, but I'm also going to campaign for a change in the way that municipal government operates, so that what you vote for has a chance of actually happening.
I guess the problem I have with it is building that consensus. I mean, you and I have talked in the last municipal election. There was a lot of, and here in Burlington as well as in Hamilton, there was this hunger for change. The fact is that our communities, I think, are hitting a crossroads in terms of how do we want to look. Here in Burlington, there's the movement of we want to keep things the way that it was. We like the small town feel in the big city kind of mentality. In Hamilton, there's talk of the LRT to revitalize their downtown core, and that's what's the price of modernity? What's the price of going presenting a new phase? And I think the problem is when we present those arguments in a binary yay or nay, in favor or against argument, we lose a lot of the nuance in between. Is that I don't think we have to lose the small town feel, but I also don't think the status quo is going to serve us well by the end of this generation. And I've always wondered, like, in this current COVID age, why wouldn't we turn like our downtowns into more walking plazas, especially in this warm weather, to say let's encourage more biking, more pedestrian walkways, not just patios for restaurants to set up, but why wouldn't we shut down all of downtown streets and allow for public space to go to eat, socialize, be sociable, but in a safe manner, and a chance for a really kind of innovative project to experiment and see, like, can this work? If it doesn't, it doesn't. You lift up the barricades, we go back to normal. Okay, it didn't work, but now's the perfect time to try it out.
Yeah.
It's a perfect time to show some innovation and take the risk and say, hey, is this going to work? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But, why not?
And the irony is, I mean, if you take, for anybody listening from beyond Burlington, Burlington's last election was a real humdinger of between the person who became our new mayor, Marianne Mead Ward, who's formerly a councillor, and the former mayor, Rick Goldring. What you just described, I don't think either of them would disagree with. I think both of them would say, yeah, that's absolutely the objective, to have walkable, attractive communities, to reduce reliance on cars. How we're getting there, though, is a huge problem. And a lot of that, I feel, I mean, these are all things for discussion in future weeks, but a lot of those things go basically back to the provincial level, and the almost dishonesty of the council's position of pretending that it actually has much influence over our downtowns, when the framework that's put in place provincially is so strong that the councils run into major problems actually just saying, we'd like this here. That's kind of what we feel as citizens maybe should be the way things work. We have a plan, and then what the plan is built. What happens is developers say, we'd like to build this, and then the various levels of government decide yay or nay on an individual basis. So there is no plan. There are aspirations that are set out by municipalities, but there's no plan until developers say what they want to build, and the landowners say what they want to build. So it's so frustrating.
See, like that's a case where it is frustrating, that model. I think what we need is a more collaborative approach of more collaborative and less adversarial. That, like right now, we have a moratorium on construction in the downtown area here in Burlington, which I think has led to there's lawsuits filed against this Burlington City Council by numerous developers, which whether they'll win or not, I don't know. I'm not a legal expert, but I'm thinking this is kind of wasted time. Like, wouldn't that make, at some point, no matter what you're doing, you're going to need a developer to come in and build, either whether it's going to be a new building or a new facility or a new neighborhood or whatever have you. You're going to need somebody to come in and build it. Why pick a fight with them? Would it make more sense to say, listen, let's figure out what can be done to make a more livable city? And I find my frustration with a lot of these debates so far has been a lot of argument about what we don't want, and there's no discussion about what do we want. And that's a harder discussion to have. It's easier to say, hey, we want to put up a high rise at this on this intersection, and okay, how many people show up to say no at the city council meeting? Okay, I get to play hero. I vote it down. But at the end of the day, something's got to be built there, or we need to do something with the space, or the idea we have to do something with the downtown because buildings age and populations change. And what are we going to do with it? And I find that's a harder debate to have, and a harder discussion to have. We aren't having that discussion, at least not at our city council level. And I think that's what you and I wanted to do, is just maybe have that discussion, and maybe we'll have a bit of it might get testy, but I think that's an important one to have, is exactly what do we want our communities to look like? Not to mention, as you were saying, going back to the provincial level, this ties into our previous argument about how important our region is to the politics of the province as well as the country, because we have so many seats here in the 905. And again, not just Hamilton and Burlington, but we're talking down in Niagara, Halton region, Mississauga, Brampton, north of Toronto, where you have Richmond Hill, Vaughan, Markham, Durham, and Oshawa, all playing an integral part. And I think what if that region decided, no, we want a better say. We want to say in how, in the policies that the province are going to develop, going to pass, and we want a more important say in terms of how our communities are developed. What would that do for the rest of the country? What kind of precedent would that say?
And that goes to the heart of the kind of the question of democracy in the sort of first half of the 21st century. That we're. This is such a huge topic, but it feels like our.
Well, we have more episodes to get into this.
Yeah. But it feels like we don't really participate in the big decisions. We get to vote, but we don't. Why is it in this day and age that we cannot have more elaborate systems of public participation in decision making that go beyond turning up and shouting at a public meeting, or going along and delegating at City Hall, or writing a nasty letter to your MPP or MP. Those are all terrible tools for public engagement, and this word engagement gets bandied around, and I had it on my lawn signs, and about 5 other people did too. And it's like, I don't think most people have the foggiest notion what the word engagement means. And to me, it means reshaping democracy in a much more fundamental way. That democracy is something that happens every day of the week and not once every 4 years, and that public participation isn't about filling in a questionnaire. It's not about it's these kind of tools are all used to that are so ineffectual and so superficial very often, when we should be shaping hand in hand with the developers, hand in hand with the politicians, what our communities look like. And there's no reason in this day and age why that can't happen. But we have systems that just create polarization. And I don't think, I'm ultimately not going to blame any politician or any developer or anybody for that. It's the procedures and the systems that we have put in place over generations that I feel are most to blame.
Well, I think it comes down to the age-old adage of democracy is that, what do the people want? And again, kind of rehashing the context of this introductory podcast is that debate isn't happening. The politicians don't know, I think, what the debate is looking like. What do people want? Where's the nuance? Instead, again, it comes down to a yes or no, yay or nay, are you with me or against me choice. And it's very easy for politicians with agendas to prey on that, to, come in and say, I'm going to give this block of people what they want, and the people who don't want it, well, they are antithetical or harmful to our way of life in our community. And that doesn't help us in the long run. We need a more collaborative and a more thoughtful approach to these debates. And I think, honestly, to inform people about what the real status or what the real potential could be, what the real choices in front of them could be, and then hopefully, the politicians can take that and apply that to their thinking, and then hold them to account for whatever decision they do decide on. But it's not you're right. It's not every 4 years let's have a debate on it. It's a discussion that needs to be happening occasionally and every now and again to keep that fire alive.
Yeah, and I just think we're at the start. This has to happen if we're going to restore public faith in democracy at every level. And I'm a big believer. For those people who don't know me, they can tell from my accent I wasn't born around here. I lived in...
Well, this is news to me.
I lived in Scotland for 10 years at the time when devolution was happening, and devolution was the restoration of a parliament in Scotland after a 300-year break. And it was a powerful... It really brought home how democracy can tangibly feel present on the streets when it wasn't there before, and suddenly it's there. Suddenly when you're walking down the street and a politician who used to you'd only ever possibly see 400 miles away is now walking down your street, and you can kind of, walk up to them and tell them what you think of them. And that parliament had in some ways it's a traditional parliament. In other ways, it had a lot of innovative features. It wasn't first past the post. Just the very physical nature of the building that it's held in changes the nature of the debate in a lot of ways. And it's like you felt the change from a situation where democracy wasn't satisfying the population to a situation where, they're still politicians, they're still going to piss you off, but it felt so much more immediate and present and connected to where you lived. I think that has to happen everywhere. It's like get the power, get the decision making to the lowest level that you can for any given decision. A decision about downtown Burlington, to my mind, is best made in Burlington and not in Queen's Park. A decision about the economy in Ontario is best made in Ontario and not in not Ottawa. Same thing. You put the decisions at the right levels, and I feel the way government has worked for hundreds of years is to take power away from the bottom and move it upwards, and that's ultimately what we need to address.
Well, it goes back to that collaborative approach of, and it's not getting away from, the cities have to go to war with Toronto, and by Toronto I mean like the provincial government to get power, and then the province has to go to Ottawa to get their rights. And it says, well, if we're spending all this time fighting with each other over who gets to sign where on the dotted line, we kind of waste time instead of deciding, well, what do we want? Well, we all want to live in a really great community. And what will that look like? Well, that's the discussion that should be happening, not the argument over, well, I need taxation powers and I need rights to do this, that. And you say, well, yeah, but at the end of the day, what are we going to do with it? What is it that we want to accomplish? And rather than fight over who gets to sit where at the table, why don't we just work on getting the job done?
Well, that's a nice idea. So, let's hope we can contribute something to the debates that might bring some more innovative decision making to our region, at least. And we should stress at this point that these podcasts are not just going to be Joel and me talking like this for hours on end. We're going to be aiming to have guests every week. Sometimes that might be more of a roundtable kind of debate with people from across the region. Sometimes that will be people who are in the news. Obviously, at the moment, for instance, an important one is the preparations that are happening right now for the return to some kind of normality in the school boards in terms of students actually going into schools and how that's going to be handled. A really difficult subject, and not one I'm sure that the province is dealing with particularly well. So that's a subject we're going to be dealing with, and one that you're quite familiar with.
Yes, I think it's the number one topic on not just everyone in our region's mind, but everyone in the country, is how do we go back to school with this pandemic still very much a part of our lives. And I think it's a perfect example of how this pandemic has turned all of our thinking up on our heads. Because if you think about it, like, our schools are built to be social inclusion factories. They're meant to be places that our children go to learn how to get along with other people, how to work with everyone, and become members of society. That is kind of the underlying assumption of our education system. And this virus says, no, that's not going to work. That in itself has become a hazard. And in private conversations with other people, I've made the comparison of, I think it's like our Apollo 13 moment. It's this looming deadline that is not flexible. It's not going to change. There's no negotiating with it. It's happening. It's coming down our way. And where are our NASA guys in a room coming up with the plan? Like, where's the coming up with a new way to tackle the problem? And personally, I don't see it. I know that at the time of this podcast, next week or the week following, there's supposed to be an announcement from the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, on how schools are going to go back, or how our children are going to go back to schools. I don't know I have no clue what he's going to be talking about. I know here in Halton, the Halton District School Board had a discussion and a debate, and they are planning to want to send kids back 5 days a week, obviously with changes to make that environment as safe as possible. And the Halton Catholic is trying to figure that out. I think they're stumbling a bit to find the right path forward, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because this is literally uncharted waters. And we're hearing that from all the other boards in the provinces. They're sitting on we think we got a plan. We'll see what happens, but it's turning into the Swiss cheese hodgepodge plan of getting our kids back to school. And it's whether it'll succeed or fail is, I mean, the history books will let us know. But I know from talking with, I have kids in the system and talking with other parents, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of concern. There are a lot of questions that are being thrown around and asked, and there's not a lot of answers. And there's that deadline's coming, and people are expecting. We need answers. We need to know, how is this going to work? And so I mean, I'm hoping to talk. I hope that we can get people from the school boards on in the coming weeks to have the discussion, not confrontational. I don't think picking a fight or throwing accusations around is really helpful at this point. But I think we need to understand exactly the challenge that is presented to them, and what possible solutions are on the table, and how do we address this? It's a big question that I think is on everybody's mind.
Well, hopefully we can get some people from the school boards to comment on exactly that. Certainly, I think everybody just has a huge number of questions, particularly those people who are parents. But also, it's like, well, the question I have is like, well, the disease is still out there, you know. But anyway, these are questions for future episodes, and that's certainly just one of the ones we're hoping to feature in the weeks ahead. There's certainly no shortage of topics, I think, as we've probably established already today. And the big story in recent weeks, well, last week, I guess, which is a bizarre thing for an episode 1 of a Halton Region podcast to discuss, but apparently we have a Nazi war memorial in Oakville. Who knew?
Yes. Apparently it's been there for decades, and nobody knew until a journalist in the Ottawa Citizen pointed it out, and and rightfully so has gotten a lot of attention. I think zero of it has been positive. It's all been negative, and it's even gone international. You yourself found an article in The Guardian, the UK paper, highlighting this story, and I think this is just I mean, we can get into the nitty-gritty about what the division stood for, and did they or did they not, but I think at the end of the day, the fact is they were an SS division. Like, these are not like your regular grunt conscripts. These are people who volunteered to join the top Nazi division fighting on the front lines in the Second World War. And I have a hard time letting that go and saying, okay, well, you know, the nitty gritty details. I think it's in a country that went to war against these people, and we know the atrocities that the SS did. I think it just cannot stand in this region to allow this to stand. I can't let this one go. It boggles my mind.
There are two sides to the story. First was the kind of final element in a bad week for the Halton police service, in that they kind of had 3 rather suspect sort of decisions during the week. I mean, first of all, the chief of police, my namesake, Steve Tanner, I think. Anyway, surname's Tanner.
I think so, yes.
Got into a kind of Twitter spat with the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, which, you know, fine, whatever. But the second one was that there was vandalism of a church sign, and someone had broken into it and rearranged the letters on the sign to read "White Power." And the police said they didn't see that was a matter of, you know, a hate crime or anything like that. And then the vandalism of a monument to the Nazis, and the vandalism said, I believe, Nazi War Monument, I think, something like that. I think those were the words.
That's right.
Which to my mind was you know, I'm not endorsing vandalism, but it was a simple statement of fact. It is a Nazi war monument. They initially investigated as a hate crime. Again, obviously not against Nazis, but against, I presume, the Ukrainian population. It just seemed like really kind of cack-handed handling of of a number of stories. They rolled that back, but as you said, not before they managed to attract the attention of the international media, which I think counts in anybody's book as a bad day at the office if you're the media relations person for the police board. But then the issue of the monument itself, which is kind of astonishing. Now, I mean, we should emphasize, if you go and see this monument, it's not obvious to anybody that it's connected with the SS.
No, there's nothing. There's no like swastikas or anything like that on it. It looks like a nondescript cenotaph in a Ukrainian community cemetery. The only identifying factors, though, to it is that it is explicitly honoring fallen members of an SS division whose members were comprised of Ukrainian volunteers. And they fought in the Eastern Front against the Soviet-Russian forces in the Second World War, and therefore to certain members of the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada, they have a certain nationalistic appeal to them. And I get that. I've posted this on my website, and I've had people say, they were cleared by the Canadian government. They weren't charged with any official war crimes, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. And I get that. But at the same time, it's a monument to Nazis. It's honoring people who chose to fight in the Second World War again on the side of the Nazis. And my grandfather drove tanks in the Second World War to kill the Nazis, and as did many other of the listeners in our that are hopefully listening right now. They had their ancestors fought and possibly even died fighting the Nazis, and I think it's it's insensitive to say the least. I think in the long run, it can definitely turn into a iconography for neo-Nazi movement here in Canada. Which is something I don't think we want. And I think it's just the fact that it's caused a lot of outrage. It's caused a lot more hurt in this community than I think honoring a vague nationalistic quality. It's caused more hurt than harm, and I think it should be taken down.
I think, yeah. I mean, I find it very difficult to defend. The fact. If it's honoring this division of people who chose to join the most notorious division of the German military, associated with sort of countless crimes against humanity, yeah, can you really defend that? And I mean, I actually reached out to a friend who is Jewish as it happens, and her reaction was actually not what you might expect. And she came out with the point, well, like, I guess it would be she would be on the side of the people who were like, leave all the statues of Civil War, Southern Civil War generals standing because it's history. And mm-hmm. To that, my answer to that, I mean, I take that point of view. However, I know my first career was as a historian, and in all the years of my work as a historian, none of us ever went to look at statues as historical sources. They're very bad history, actually. They're there because they're there to suggest that this is something to be honored in the same way as a crucifix might be, or it's look up to this. You mortals and right. And bow down before. That's what monuments are. So I don't ever feel that you shouldn't be whitewashing history thing is a particularly good argument, as long as we don't forget. I mean, the important thing in history is that we don't forget, and that we maintain the account and the evidence. It doesn't mean that you have to keep this statue in this place because that kind of defends anything. It's like, well, then you can say, well, anything that's ever been put up by anybody is a historic artifact and has to be preserved. Well, obviously, it doesn't make sense.
Well, I think it just goes to the fact that it's. I think it just is based on that. It's a monument to Nazis. Like I can't. I don't see where the debate is. I don't see a gray area here of oh geez, like let's hear the other side. Like the other side are Nazis. Like that's what it comes down to, is that I've always said, like, there's no such thing as a good Nazi. And I mean, I understand it's a community trying to honor their national pride, but at the same time, I'm like, choose a different way. There's got to be more heroes in your past to honor, to deify if you have to. Don't pick the guys who sided with the Nazis. It's a bad hill to die on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important to say we'd be very delighted to hear from anybody in the Ukrainian community who wants to defend this monument and give us a reason why it's justifiable and why it should remain there. I certainly think St. Volodimir's church should be asked the question. And this brings us back again to the point that our media is no good at following through on stories. It might report a fact, but no one's going to the church and say, well, should you really have this still? Should it have been put there in the first place? Who put it in there in the first place? Who paid for it? These are all valid questions that in a healthy media environment, I think, get asked. And maybe there's some explanation. Like you, I can't imagine what it would possibly be. But
I'm drawing a blank in terms of what it could possibly be. I think in the light of the fact that it's come out, and there's a lot of people who are hurt. There are people who of Jewish descent, who are understandably horrified by this. There are people who had family members who fought and died on the Allied side against the Nazis, and and especially that this country fought against the Nazis. It's a question that I think it's caused so much division and hurt that you might have to sit down and take a look in the mirror and say, okay, we intended something. It is clearly not registering, and we need to take a look a cold look in the mirror and say, hey, is this what we're comfortable with? The one thing I was shocked at is how the attitude of the general public of being hurt is prevalent. It's across the entire country and across the free world that this exists. And yet the leadership in Oakville, the mayor and the city council, seems to take a collective shrug and, it's on private land, can't do anything about it. We're moving on. And I find that to be a very disappointing take from the city council. I understand it's on private land, but there's where's the official motion presented by city council to request that it be taken down? Where's the outrage? And just a passive statement posted to Twitter on the mayor's Twitter account, I don't think really cuts it. I want to see more anger and more action taken to say, no, this has to come down. This is not, we're not a community that is going to quibble on this matter. And I'd like to hear more people discuss this. I don't think this is a conversation that should die off, which often too happens in the media void that we have here in the 905, is that something like this is clearly causing a lot of division. It's caused a lot of anger, and unfortunately the news comes and then all of a sudden it'll disappear. And I think this is a conversation that needs to happen, is that, are we comfortable with this being allowed to happen? The question that I've always wondered is, what's to stop somebody from lighting crosses on a farmland in up north? this is a conversation that needs to happen.
Yeah, and I certainly don't feel that the argument, where's private land, what can you do, is one that holds any water. When if I try and build a deck with the wrong type of screws in my backyard, the city will have plenty to say about it. If I try and cut down a tree in my backyard, the city will have plenty to say about that. But I can put up a Nazi war monument? Okay. I mean, it doesn't sound quite right, does it?
Well, I was wondering, like, on Bronte Road, I'm not saying this is a case of any of the people who own land along Bronte Road, but if somebody bought land and said, I want to start lighting crosses on my front lawn from a distance, are you just going to shrug your shoulders and say, hey, what are you going to do? Am I right? And no, like, I would expect some action to be taken and say, no, this is not the kind of community that we want to illicit and make public. We are not that kind of community. And that's, I think having this debate is going to keep pressure on and say, hey, maybe people are comfortable with having this kind of thing in their community, and you and I are the minority. But again, I think that's something that people should be aware of, that's the case. And what does that mean?
Well, it's certainly an interesting topic for week one of our podcast, and perhaps we'll follow up with it. Well, let's try and follow up with it in weeks ahead. It'd be great if we could get some comment from St. Waldemar's. It'd be great if we got some more comment from Oakville Council about this and about the legal ins and outs of it. By all accounts, they've been aware of this for a few years and have been kind of sitting on it. Now it's come into the public eye, and certainly I suspect the usual expectation at city halls across the region are that, well, this will go away in a week and we can all go back to life as usual, and that's part of the problem. Okay, well, I'm just looking at the time, and we've been talking for almost an hour, so
right.
And this is maybe a short introduction, so we should probably wrap it up. As I say, in future weeks we'll have other guests, people directly connected with stories in the news, but hopefully this whets the appetite for what we may be doing, and appreciate everybody who's tuned into this first episode. Hopefully whatever glitches and difficulties that we're working out with the technology will be minor enough that you can still hear us, and that I'm sure these will be things that we'll get better and better at in the weeks ahead. But in the meantime, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week.
You looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.